basically like any other startup or any other business. I was broke, $35,000 in credit card debt. I didn't know how to make money, couldn't get Christmas presents for my girlfriend for several years. Like it got bad. It got really, really, really bad. But what I always say is a lot of people, they have their P's in the wrong order. They start something for profit and they try to convince themselves that they're passionate about it. I started this for passion. There was no money in sight. I had no idea how we were going to make money. I just stayed in the pool long enough to learn how to swim. And a lot of other people, they get out, they find the ladder, and we never found the ladder. We just stayed in.
Welcome to the LandLife Podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
Hey guys, welcome to the LandLife Podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, like I always say, if you're getting value from this podcast, please like, share, leave a comment. Hit me up on TikTok too. I'm actually on TikTok now, which is kind of weird for a guy my age, but whatever. We're going to try it. PJ Riley is LandLife is the TikTok handle. Today, guys, our guest today is, as a podcaster, what you aspire to be. He's got over 1,000 podcast episodes already. I'm on, I want to say like 35 or something like that, Kevin, and you're at over 1,000. Global top 100 podcast and the CFO of Next Level University. Kevin, how you doing?
I am doing very well, PJ. Our energy behind the scenes was wonderful, so I'm going to try to keep up with it awesome. On the in front of the scenes. That's my goal today.
There we go. Kevin, where are you at? What part of the country are you in?
I live in New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
I live in New Hampshire.
Pretty far out there. What's the weather like in the summer in New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, it's like right now it's 82. It's been very, very hot, like 95 to 100 over the last week or so. So it's it's nice. The winter's pretty brutal depending on where you are, but it's any New England state, you can kind of expect that.
So we're talking mountains, beaches. What do you got up there? Where are you at?
I'm close to Nashua. So it's kind of just a city. It's okay. If you landed here, you wouldn't know it was New Hampshire. You would just assume it's any regular place. So nowhere good. Okay.
All right. Kevin, I mean, the intro is pretty big. 1,000 podcasts. You're a CFO of a Next Level University. We have to talk about what that is. How did you get started? How did we get to the point we're at right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just like everybody else, and I always start with this, just like everybody else, we started with one episode. We were doing one a week long before we were doing 7. And the reason we do the things we do is based on the ultimate goal. So I always try to put that out there, but it started for me kind of by accident. My friend, who is now the co-founder of our business, he had a YouTube channel and he said, Kev, I'd love to interview you about fitness and mindset. And I said, I can't guarantee it's going to be valuable. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm down to do it. Let's do it. And after he interviewed me, it was myself, his name's Alan, and we had another buddy there. And I said to my other buddy, I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. I mean, we just talked for an hour and a half and it went by in what seems like 5 minutes. If I could do that every day, my life would be pretty darn good. And he said, well, you can. I mean, there's ways to do that. The next day I went out and I bought all the equipment. I YouTubed it. I Googled it. I figured out what microphone, what mixer, how to get on Apple Podcast, all of that, how to do artwork. And I was off to the races with a podcast. And I think like most people, it was just a passion project in the beginning, right? It was a very unique time for me, PJ, because the previous year I was in the weatherization industry. So just think construction. And I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. And wow. I thought that was going to bring me happiness. I thought that was going to be like success. And I was miserable. I spent 10 months on the road living in hotels because we were always on the road. And when I started the podcast, everything started to shift for me because I realized I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. I wanted to have an impact on the world. And over the next year, I started calling out of work. I would show up late. I'd leave the job site early because my heart wasn't in it. And I was so burnt out. Like burnt out is an understatement. I was driving 6 hours to a job site, working an 8-hour day, and then going to the gym after. And that was just like a normal day. There was nothing extraordinary about that. That was just pretty normal. Yeah. So I was just so burnt out. And it got to the point, PJ, where I was in a hotel room sitting on the edge of a bed, and I was debating suicide because I felt so trapped and so stuck where I was. And I knew I couldn't do it forever. I knew I didn't want to do it forever. And I ended up texting my buddy, and he really, really helped me get through that time. But he said, you have to change your environment. I mean, you have to change your environment. Your environment's been the same for a long time. And that's when I quit my job. I left my job 3 or 4 months after that, and then went full time into what we're doing today. And the next 3 years were basically like any other startup or any other business. I was broke, $35,000 in credit card debt. I didn't know how to make money, couldn't get Christmas presents for my girlfriend for several years. Like, it got bad. It got really, really, really bad. But what I always say is, a lot of people, they have their P's in the wrong order. They start something for profit and they try to convince themselves that they're passionate about it. I started this for passion. There was no money in sight. I had no idea how we were going to make money. I just stayed in the pool long enough to learn how to swim. And a lot of other people, they get out, they find the ladder, and we never found the ladder. We just stayed in.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I was going to ask you immediately. I know everyone's thinking right now, how do you afford to live as a podcaster? But if you're 35,000 in debt, you're broke, no one's getting gifts, I guess that's how you do it. You just eat ramen and, you're still hitting the gym though?
Of course.
Okay. Guys, if you can't see Kevin right now, he's jacked.
Thank you.
Dude's
I appreciate it.
Dude's a beast. I looked him up on Facebook. He's got guns that are bigger than my quads.
I appreciate it. That's one thing that I tried never to get rid of, no matter how broke I was the gym membership. Because that, not only is it good for me physically, but it's always been like therapy. Just going and the weights don't care what you're going through. and that helps.
You can drop them and they don't get mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin, did you have, I know you had a couple friends around you, but what kind of circle are you surrounding yourself with that's like encouraging you daily? So I get it, like, hey, we should go do this podcast. That's great. But every single day, who are you surrounding yourself? What kind of life are you building that's okay, that's a good idea, I guess, to keep moving forward?
Yeah, so next week I'm going to Colorado. I'm eloping. I'm getting married. And
we're in Colorado.
Telluride.
Perfect.
Telluride.
Perfect.
She was my girlfriend at the time, and we had a very real conversation in the beginning. And she said, my only necessity, my only non-negotiable is you can't make me be an entrepreneur. And I said, done. Don't worry about it. I said, my only non-negotiable is you can never try to take the podcast away from me. Because if you do, I'll have to leave. I can't lose it. Like this is my baby. So number one, I was very honest with the love of my life when it came to that. And number two, at this point, we have a 16-person team, and we have a very successful business now. So it's not like I don't want to show up. There's days I don't, but it's more about the mission for us, PJ. I think that Alan and I both grew up without fathers. We were both raised by single mothers. My father, I didn't meet until I was 27. Alan's dad passed away in a car accident when he was 2. And we both have a deep belief and a similar belief that if we had self-improvement in our lives earlier, from a place of non-ego, our lives would have been better. There's a lot of people out there who can tell you how to get better at making money, but they can't necessarily talk about relationships. And there's a lot of people who can talk about fitness, but can't necessarily talk about money and relationships. So our goal was to be the most well-rounded human beings possible. I remember in our first studio, it was Alan's sister's old bedroom at his mom's house. We weren't competing for who could make more money. Alan and I had a conversation, and I said, I can be a better man than you in the future. That's what I'm playing for. And Alan and I are trying to beat each other at that every single day. And it's wonderful. And I'm blessed because I have a very virtuous, awesome business partner too. So I'm very grateful. I did not do this on my own. I don't believe anybody is self-made, and I certainly am not. But it's the mission, PJ. Really, I don't do 7 episodes a week because I want to. I do 7 episodes a week because there's 7 days in the week. If somebody decides they're going to do an 8th, we're going to do another episode, and that's just what we believe is what our community deserves. That's the reason we do what we do. A lot of businesses are set up based on the amount of money they can make. We're set up based on the amount of impact we can have. And that's the way we've always run our business.
That's super interesting. I get, okay. So you guys are kind of like an all-encompassing podcast. You're going to teach people, I'm guessing, fitness, how to be good men, how to run a business, all these things. It's like all encompassing. You can, I mean, if you have 7 episodes a week and over 1,000 episodes, I'm sure you can cover, quite a lot of topics. Are you bringing in guests? Are you bringing in, or are you guys just, coming up with all the material yourself?
Just us. We were having guests for a long time, and then it just got to the point where we were like, honestly, I think we're going to go in a different direction. But before every episode, I sit down and we have like an ideal listener avatar. I know so much about our listeners that I just say, oh, what does PJ need today? And most of our listeners are women or humans who identify as women, believe it or not. You think tattoos and bodybuilding, and I love fighting and mixed martial arts, but I think it's the vulnerability. I try to just be a real, authentic, vulnerable human. And I think that, and I don't mean this with any ego, but I think a lot of women, when they found us, they said, oh, that does exist. I didn't know that the masculine but vulnerable existed. I didn't know that existed. And I believe that's why we have the demographic that we do. But we sit down and say, what do they need? You're a dream chaser. What do you need? Well, maybe you have an aversion to money. So what can we do in this episode to help you shift your money mindset? Okay, cool. Maybe you're holding yourself back with a fear of judgment. Okay, what story do I have from a client or myself that I can tie to that lesson? So it really is, what does our audience need at this time that we can deliver through powerful stories, powerful lessons, and powerful examples? And that's really how we come up with our topics. That's
super interesting. That's very interesting. So, I know it's not really cool to be, I guess, a vulnerable guy right now, especially if you're, a big weightlifter, MMA kind of guy like you. I want to shift a little bit to the actual mechanics of the podcast. You said you had 16 team members on a podcast. Okay. If you're a new podcaster, like I know, and we're going to say new is under 100 episodes. If you're a new podcaster and you're listening to this, you're probably doing most of the work yourself. I personally edit the podcast. I put out all the reels, the TikTok stuff, everything else. Where do you start as a under 100 episode person like myself, and probably like a lot of people here? Where do you begin? What is the first employee that you would bring onto a team to build something that you guys have built?
It depends on the value of your hour. So that's the best way to frame it is, if it's taking you, just say 2 hours a week to do audio editing and video editing, and you would charge $250 an hour for your time, it's costing you $500. You're spending $500 already. You just don't realize it. I would probably do like audio editing, video editing, because you can get way less for more on that. That buys you more time. And then ultimately you can go do more. And then that's really all it is you got to figure out what your genius zone is. So my genius zone, and when I say that, it doesn't mean I'm a genius at it. It just means that's what I spend the most time doing. My genius zone, the center of that, the bullseye target, is podcasting. So we do 7 episodes a week. I have another podcast about podcasts, which I don't know why I started, but so I do 8 episodes minimum. And then I'm on anywhere from 8 to 20 other shows a week. So I'm doing at least 100 podcasts a month, but that's my main thing. So we have determined me being on our show and going on other shows is the best use of my time, because it helps me master. It helps me master speaking and storytelling. And that's really what it's about. So it really depends on where is your genius zone and where are you lagging the most. If you're a podcaster who relies on speeches, you should bring somebody on full time who can get you speeches. If you don't know how to audio edit and video edit, and it's taking time, you should do that. Depending on where you make your money within the podcast, that's a whole nother thing too. But it really depends on, number one, the value of 1 hour of your time. And then number 2, where your genius zone actually lays.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to ask that honestly for my own.
Yeah, no, you're good.
My own benefit. I think this is pretty much a selfish podcast for me. I just ask questions that would help me. All right. So, but going back to the podcast itself, you were saying now monetizing a podcast. I mean, so at what point do you monetize a podcast? How do you move towards monetizing a podcast?
I believe as soon as humanly possible. Okay. I believe you try to monetize as soon as humanly possible. Our direction has always been one-on-one coaching. We're in a business and we're in a genre and a category where your goal is to add as much value as humanly possible. But the interesting part is there's only so much value you can add on a podcast, because you can only be so specific and so contextual to somebody's needs. But that's where you build out the business under it and say, well, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, we have a course, for instance, that speaks on this, or we have a mastermind or whatever it is. For us, it's been one-on-one coaching. In the beginning, I went to Alan and I said, I'm running out of money. And by money, I mean credit cards. I don't have much left that I can swipe. I need to start making money. What are we going to do? And he said, I want you to message somebody that listens to the podcast and just offer them free coaching. And that's how it started. I messaged somebody named Jenna. I said, hey, Jenna, I'm thinking of starting coaching. I'd love to do it for free. No, it's no strings attached. You and I will hop on the phone every week. And my goal is to help you level up. That's it. And she said, I'd love that. That went from $0 to $50 a week to $75 a week to $100 a week. And that just kept evolving as we grew. So for us, that's the main way. But I mean, you can do sponsorships, you can do ads, you can do affiliates. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I am yet to see anything as impactful as one-on-one coaching.
Wow.
And there's a lot of reasons under that, but one of the biggest reasons is you're building real relationships with your listeners and they're pouring back into the podcast. Ads are great, but you're not adding value to your audience. When you coach somebody, they look at you differently because you help them, and they're more likely to listen and be a valued member of your community because you're helping them in a real way. So that's what's helped us. And I really think that's what sets us apart is a lot of people, PJ, they start podcasts so they can work less. We started a podcast, learned how to work more, and then learned how to work smarter. And now we work harder, smarter. And that's why we're able to do so much. For us, it's not an exit sign. It's not a door out. It's just, how do we continue building this from every angle, really?
That's super interesting. So yeah, you're definitely giving me free coaching. I'm like the JV quarterback from my high school, and let's go with Peyton Manning.
We preferred Tom Brady before he went down to Florida. Yeah. I know not many people like him.
Okay, we can go with Tom Brady. I'll take Tom Brady. Okay. So that's super interesting. And that's, I don't want to get into why I started a podcast, but it kind of is the same thing. I didn't know stuff, and I started learning a bunch of stuff. And I started meeting a bunch of other business guys. I'm like, other people need to hear this stuff. I don't want to just hold it into my head. So that's really cool that you do that. This is Next Level University then, correct? Is this where we're moving in? That's what you're talking about? So
our podcast is Next Level University, but within our podcast, we have 23 or 24 layers to our business. So it is like, that's the entirety. Next Level University is the brand, and it's also the podcast. Okay.
So coaching with you, what is exactly does that look like? Let's just go with the one-on-one coaching, and then we'll move into I see you do group speaking, you do all kinds of crazy stuff. So let's just go with the one-on-one coaching. What does that look like if I were to come to you?
So it's actually transitioned a lot, because I used to do peak performance mindset coaching, and I've transitioned into purely podcast coaching. At this point, I've realized that that's my jam. I edited the first 350 episodes, audio editing. I learned video editing. I've just learned so much about podcasting, where Alan does the business, peak performance, business mindset coaching. So for me, it looks way different than most people, but it's very much what you and I just did. Every other week, I hop on the phone with my clients and I say, how are listens? How are things? We go through and we say, what are the 1% improvements that we can make to help you get to where you want to get with podcasting? It's the Wild West, and there's a lot of people that lie about what's possible. And we don't pay for ads, we don't pay for listens. I don't have that many followers. There's a reason, because they're all real and they're organic. So it's me trying to help raise people's awareness so they can actually get real results based on what we've done. That's coaching in a nutshell.
Wow. So, I just talked about it to another guy about that too, about paid advertising. Where does that doesn't play into any part of your business, correct?
Nope.
So you wouldn't even advise anybody to do any sort of paid advertising, or would that be absolutely not?
Not unless you have a very, very tight systemized business within your podcast, because if you're paying for listens, you're just losing money. I had a client who did that, and she ended up 4xing her listens on a monthly basis. And I said, that's great, but you're not taking on one-on-one clients, and you don't have any monetization points yet. So you're basically getting people in the door, which is awesome. And you're adding value, which is the main focus, but you're all that money is going right back out the door. So just from a sustainability standpoint, if you're spending $1,000 on a paid ad and you can make 1,001, do it.
Yeah.
That's good. But you also have to understand, this is what happens. The very big podcasters, they cross a chasm where they say, you know what, I care more about the bottom line than I do the listener. And that's when they start, having 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ads at the beginning of their show. And it takes 6 minutes to get into the episode. Unlistenable. And they lose a lot of the people who help them get there. So you have to think from the perspective of your community. And that's a balance. So yeah, if you're going to do it, just understand that it might have negative repercussions with the community. It's possible.
Yeah. I think organic growth is the best in really every business.
Yeah.
People know when you're genuine and when you're selling them something. So if you're constantly posting these ads, saying these ads before your podcast, I skip through all of it. If I know there's a podcast that has 5, 6, 7 minutes of video of ads, I'll just skip through the whole thing. I have no idea what they're saying anyway. And then in all honesty, it kind of makes me not want to listen to the podcast. But I do understand, like, the new guy thinking, I just want to make some money at this thing. Yeah. My wife hears me up in this office talking all the time. She's getting irritated. We're not making any money at this. What's the fastest thing I can do to get some cash? And it's these ads, right? It seems like it'd be the fastest way to do it. So I've also seen, with like YouTube channels, you have to get to a certain level before you can monetize the podcast, right? Yeah. Me with my, 50 or so viewers are not going to get the money that you get at whatever 10,000 viewers. How do you move from 50? The most basic level, from 0 to, what'd you say, a 6-figure business? How did you get to that point? Like, what do you do to grow to get to that level?
One of my favorite quotes that I tell people is, you have to treat your podcast like a business. And that means you have to show up every single day and you have to do whatever it takes to grow your own version of your business. So for us, we post on social media every single day, every day. It doesn't matter if I don't want to do it. It's necessary to grow the business. But I would say the number one thing for us, PJ, is we actually talk to our community. There's a lot of people out there who say, oh, don't do free calls. It devalues you. It makes you look bad. It's whatever. I do free calls all the time. Every single week I'm on free calls with listeners or people. And the main focus is to add value. The person who adds the most value wins eventually. It's just the way it works.
Write that down, guys. The person who adds the most value wins eventually.
It's the way it works. It's the way it works. And that's why a lot of people, whether it's in the podcasting industry or business in general, they don't last a long time, is because they're not adding enough value. That is the main thing, is make sure, number one, make sure your content is valuable, make sure you have good audio, make sure you have good video. Cool. Those are baselines. From what I have seen, having guests is one of the best ways to grow your show. Doing solo episodes and talking about the problems that you solve for your listeners is one of the best ways to make money, because you're actually talking to your listener about the struggle that they're going through. But yeah, for us, it was very much, okay, figure out, come up with a 10-word description of your podcast. So what is your podcast in a nutshell? You should be able to explain it on a fly and get somebody to understand it completely. Number 2, who are you actually talking to? And that's where a lot of people get stuck, is it's like, well, I just talk about what I want and I know people are going to come listen. Not necessarily. That's the Joe Rogan approach, and it worked for Joe Rogan, but he was already Joe Rogan before the podcast. So that's a fine line. So you have to make sure you're actually niching to one focus point, like to one silo. That helps a lot. Even us, like, we could niche more, but I think we're in pretty close to the sweet spot where we are. And then it's just consistency. I see so many people who, and again, I understand, I have empathy, but they are not consistent. Imagine this. My fiance and I went to a restaurant when we were on vacation, and I heard great things about this restaurant, and it was closed. It was like a Wednesday afternoon and they were closed. And since they were closed, we went and found another restaurant. I don't know if it was better or worse than the restaurant we were going to go to, but I'm never going to go to a restaurant, most likely. It's out of my mind. Same with a podcast. It's your job to deliver value. If you're not open, they will find someone else. There's plenty of shows out there that talk about what you talk about, most likely. Same here. Same here. So yeah, it's that consistency. You got to show up every day, and you have to build real relationships with real people, because that's the way the business world, podcasting, everything is going.
Sure. I know a lot of people I guess they don't want to move forward because they're like, well, I don't know what to talk about. That's one thing. Also, what about this? Kevin's got this great background. He's got an awesome mic in front of him. He's got those headphones. I mean, where do I start? Do I need a nice camera? Do I need a nice microphone? How do I get going? Like, what did you start with?
I started with, literally, there's a reason I have this. These are the two things I started with. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, because if you might not be watching on YouTube, but all you need now is a microphone that plugs directly into your laptop. That's it. That's $100 on Amazon. In the beginning, you don't need a camera because you don't even have to put it on YouTube. It's almost one of those things where I joke about it, but it kind of doesn't matter where you start, because nobody's going to listen in the beginning anyway. So
I love it.
You can go back, watch our early stuff. It's not good.
Yeah.
There is no backdrop. The camera is garbage. It's not 4K. It's not good. So the main focus is, you can literally start with a pair of Apple headphones and your cell phone. That's it. You can literally start there. The barrier to entry is lower than ever. So that is not a problem anymore. But with the lower the barrier to entry, oftentimes the higher the failure rate, because it's easier to get into. So obviously, it doesn't take quite the commitment or research to get into it. But that's all you got to do is start. Maybe you don't know what you're talking about in the beginning, but talk about what you think you should be. It's, again, you're going to get better as you go. 1,050 episode, Kevin, is way better than episode number 1. It's just the reps. It's the reps. You got to believe it'll be worth it if you do it long enough.
Yeah. I think that's really everything in life, right? Mm-hmm. Anything you want to get good at, like we're saying, Tom Brady didn't just walk onto the field as a New England Patriot. He'd been playing for years and years and years, and failing and not starting on a team. He's a great example, I guess. Not starting on a college team, right? And then getting the pros, not being highly drafted. And all of a sudden, all these years of trial and error turned out, to this amazing podcast that Kevin has right now, with a great background and a good mic, and, tons of people that like to watch it. I'll get a little different here from the podcast. What is driving you, Kevin, right now to keep moving forward every single day? I mean, money aside, business aside, what is driving you right now?
I believe that at this point, it's kind of our responsibility to keep doing what we're doing. And I love it. I mean, I love podcasting. It's my favorite thing in the world. So that's the first thing. It's not hard for me to do because it's something I genuinely enjoy doing. So I'm very grateful for that. But there's two things. One, we're not even close to where we need to be. That's me just being honest. We're not close. Yeah, we're successful and all that, but we're not close to where we should be. So that's one part of it. But I think the other part is, I really believe we can do it. I believe we can bring holistic self-improvement to the masses. There's 2 of us. That's an important piece. So we have, while other people might have, 8 hours of work a day, we have 16. So that's important. And I believe that our pasts have created the fuel for us to keep going. I want to do it because I don't ever want anybody to be sitting on the edge of a bed suicidal, or I don't ever want anybody to be in a terrible relationship that they shouldn't be, or I don't want anybody to be broke. That's our goal, is to help people make their lives better so they can help other people make their lives better. That's what keeps me going. And the messages, you get good amazing messages from people saying, hey, this episode was fire, or, that episode changed my life. That part definitely plays a big part of it too, because that feels really, really good. It feels like we're making an impact on the world.
Yeah. So what about, I think a lot of people too, so they want to be like Kevin. They want to get to that point. They don't take the first step, really just due to lack of preparation. They don't think, in my head, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record a video. It's just going to be a video. I don't know what it is. It's probably going to suck, but it's going to be my first video. They just jump into the day, and and hope for the best. What is your preparation? What does Kevin's preparation look like every single day, every single week to get to the point where you're at now?
Yeah, and again, I'll say this, my preparation now is way different than it was in the beginning, because now I can I don't want to say I can just show up, but it's way different than it ever was. But now I try to make sure I'm getting 8 hours of sleep. Before I go to bed, I check my calendar for the next day. The last thing I do before I go to sleep is check my calendar. The first thing I do when I wake up is check my calendar. And then it's very much, how do I operate with maximum productivity? Really, it's like, what do I have today and how much do I have to pour? And then I just measure my cup. How empty is my cup? How full is my cup? That really is what it is. In the beginning, it was completely different though. It was writing out, this is my social media post for the day. This is how many people I'm going to reach out to, all of that. But I live in a spreadsheet now. I just do what my spreadsheet says. I do the same 23 things every day. That's really how my life is set up. That's great for me. I don't require a lot of variety, and I just need to be told what to do. So I have my habits I track every day, and I think that is one of the most impactful things I do. But it's very much in the beginning, how do I move the needle a little bit? Just a little bit. One social media post, one episode, one connecting with somebody, one potential client, one getting outside of your comfort zone, one page read. That stuff adds up. Yeah. And I always try to be an example of that. 5 years ago, when I started this, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about podcasting. I'd never studied self-improvement, but I've just done it every day. That's it. It's just the reps. It's just the reps over time.
Exactly. Advice to the new podcaster.
Get to know your audience. If I ask you, who are your listeners and what are they dealing with, and you can't give me an answer, that's a great 1% improvement for you to figure that out. And podcasts are not oversaturated. That's not real. I know there's a lot out there, but there's 35 million YouTube channels and people are still pumping those out. So it's not too saturated, and you got to be patient. We had 1,074 downloads our first year. We had that yesterday. So it took a long time to get to that number, but now that number is becoming more exponential, but it never would have if we stopped after one, if we stopped after two. You just got to keep going and try to get a little bit better every day, every single day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Consistency, guys. You're not going to get to 1,050 podcasts in a week. It takes time. It takes making the thing better too. Kevin, how can people get hold of you?
Oh man, if you want to listen to our podcast, it's Next Level University, and it's on all the podcast platforms, YouTube, all that happy jazz. And then the best place to reach out to me is on Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid, and I try to send videos to everybody who follows me. So feel free to shoot me a follow. Any questions you have about podcasting, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much, man. I think all these questions I asked were for me, but like
it's all good.
It's a selfish podcast.
It's all good. I appreciate you. It was a blast.
Awesome. Kevin, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, you gonna ask the last question?
I got one coming.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure. I've been prepping for that.
It's coming.
Okay. One quote I say that I like to say, because especially when we talk about podcasting, your reality becomes the parts of your imagination that you hold onto and pour into the longest. When I was 7 episodes in, I recorded an episode. It was called Chase Your Effing Dreams. That was the title. And it was all about how I wanted to wake up when I want, go to sleep when I want, work out when I want, podcast with amazing people, and be my own boss. And here we are 1,000 episodes later, and that's what I get to do. But that's the thing that I stayed laser focused on over the last 5 years. And I believe if you do the same thing, you have a much higher likelihood of accomplishing whatever it is that you're setting out for. I can't promise it'll happen, but you definitely have a higher likelihood of it happening.
How many years ago did you start podcasting?
April of 2017. So 5.5.
5.5 years. 5.5 years to a lifestyle by design. If you're willing to put 5.5 years of work in, you can live the life that Kevin's obviously living, flying out to Telluride, which is a very nice place.
Yes, I've heard great things.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like the Switzerland of the United States. All right, Kevin, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is the big one. This is the big question we ask at the end of every podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We are LandLife. Obviously, it doesn't require too much a thought to think about what we do, to know what we do. Buy and sell dirt, right? I buy and sell dirt and trees, land all over the country. If you, Kevin, could buy land anywhere in the entire world, where would it be and why?
It's a hard question because my answer is only as good as my awareness is.
Okay.
I would say Vermont. My fiance's family has a cabin on Lake Champlain, I think. So it would be up there. It's a wonderful place. It is beautiful. That would probably be it. Maybe in 2 weeks it'll be Telluride, but I would say Vermont, in the sticks of Vermont. I like land. I like quads and dirt bikes and that kind of stuff. So I like a lot of land.
Awesome. Vermont it is. I think you may be the second person that said Vermont. I want to say you were the second person that said Vermont. So
I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And guys, till next time on LandLife.